All the time, He's at every meeting. I mean, His presence, a lovely presence is with us. But we didn't know that the presence and the power were the same thing. We'd not been taught that. God hadn't spoken to us. And so the presence would come and we'd all cry and worship the Lord. Well, it was more like this in those days. And, more like that in those days. But, I mean, we were worshiping the Lord. We were having a wonderful time. For us, it was total abandonment, We were having a great time at that point. And we would just worship the Lord, and His presence would come, and people would weep, and people would be converted. I mean, from the first day, people have been converted in our ministry. You know something? I've only preached the kerygma, the gospel message, about 4 times in 7 years. And so, I'm definitely not focused from the pulpit standpoint on the unsaved. But we've baptized hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of new converts. I'm not even sure how many. I would guess at least 3,000 over the last 7 years. So God has been saving people in our midst from day one. But not because we were focused on that, but because we were focused on Him. And as we would come into His presence and worship Him, and gather and collect, and just give ourselves over to worship, He would just come and rest on us. We could feel His presence. I mean, the air would thicken up. We could feel His presence in the room. God was with us. We knew it. But we didn't know that the presence and the power were the same thing. And so we would pray, and we'd pray these pitiful prayers. Oh God, if you're up there anywhere, if you've ever done anything, anytime, here's a worthy subject. You ever prayed a prayer like that? You have too. You've prayed prayers just like that. You're just like me. That's what you're like. And I didn't know how to pray either. One time I was praying one of those kind of prayers. God says, what are you doing? I said, I'm fixing to get this guy well. He says, no, you're not. I said, I thought so. I said, what's the problem? He says, well, the way you're praying. I said, what do you mean? I mean, I had done everything, man. I'd claimed it. I'd named it. I would have done anything in those early. I explored every theology I had ever heard of. I mean, after you failed 500 times, wouldn't you? And we had failed at least that many times. And I was going to do anything. In those days. I read every book I could get my hands on anybody that ever had any success on healing anyone. And so we were ready to try anything. He said, well, the way you're praying. And I said, well, what's wrong? And he says, why don't you pray like we did? I said, like you did? He said, us guys. I said, well, how did they pray? I had never studied that in my whole Christian experience. And I went home that night and got out the Gospels and just went through and read all the prayers of Jesus. They're really short. C. Rise, pick up your bed, and walk. That's a hot one, isn't it? Here's my favorite. Come forth. Don't you think he did that? Huh? I mean, that separates the men from the boys. Come forth. That's a hot prayer. Now, you're going to look pretty stupid if he doesn't come forth. But, I mean, if he does, you're going to look good. They're going to put your picture in a paper and everything. And after all, that's what it's all about. Isn't that looking good? Well, in any case, then I went home. I mean, after that, I tried to adapt all those prayers. Now, it's strange trying to pray the prayers of the New Testament. Well, that's a whole other subject. We'll get into it later.